Welcome to my study and to another Dongits Model Railway construction update video. I am building this frame to support the rising gradient of the figure 8 mainline as it rises towards the overbridge. I have built the frame with the gradient already in it, so I don't need to space up the surface from the frame. This will require less wood and provide a stronger, smoother running surface. Woodwork always makes a mess. Let's get rid of this sawdust on the lower level track before we put the top on and make it more difficult to get in here. Where possible, it's best to make the mess well away from the track in the first place. I've traced the outline of the surface piece I need in reverse on what will be the underside of the sheet of ply. The reason for doing it upside down is that despite using the finest tooth blade I have for my jigsaw and taking my time making the cuts, it still creates splinters, particularly on the top surface of the board. I created this outline by printing this section of the layout out in 1:1 scale, sticking the sheets together carefully, making sure it was all lined up square, pinning it upside down on the board and drawing around it. The most critical edges where the new surface has to line up with another piece of board have all been planned slightly long and need trimming back after drying the piece of board in place. You can always cut some wood off to make the piece smaller, but it's not possible to add any back on to make it bigger again. As I discovered earlier, even my 2015 new build house does not have precisely 90-degree corners and perfectly straight walls. I'm using countersunk screws to secure the surface down. This provides good compromise between a secure but unobtrusive fixing and also something that can be taken apart again should I find I have blocked myself from getting access to something important later. This is something I've had to do before, where one part of the layout got in the way of building the next part and I had to dismantle something briefly to allow access to something else. Once there is roadbed, track laid and scenery down, this won't be possible anymore, but there's still a lot of this layout that would come apart with just a screwdriver at the moment. I put the surface joint between this piece and the next piece where I did, because there's a gradient change right before the bridge and I want that joint to be well away from that change. Having a joint and a gradient change at the same place makes it difficult to properly shape a vertical curve between gradients. The 1:1 plan I previously used to trace onto the ply then gets put on top of the baseboard and used again to plan the roadbed. I'm using some spare pieces of set track of the target radius to confirm my curves can be laid out smoothly, despite the tight radius in use here. I'm not planning to use any of this track in the end product, it's purely construction aid. But because the curve is so tight here, I will need to widen the track spacing out for clearance. This is one of the compromises of fitting this much layout into this little room. I used closed cell foam as a roadbed. This is LD45 grade and in 3mm thick sheets. It glues well. I stick it down with normal PVA. It has a bit more give in it than traditional cork sheet, so results in quieter running. And being a closed cell foam, it doesn't deteriorate like the old 1980s foam underlay did. It cuts easily with a pair of scissors, leaving a nice clean edge. The next morning, after the glue is dry, the roadbed looks like a continuous curve with no gap. You can barely see the join where it used to end. At this corner here, I'm fixing a problem I left for myself earlier. This is a result of the plan changing and raising this part of the track, and this leg is now not long enough. I could, in theory, unscrew the leg and make a longer replacement. But there aren't many legs on this layout, and I'm a little concerned I'd risk warping something if I pulled the only leg in this corner of the layout out. If it were absolutely necessary, I could rig up some alternative supports and unscrew it. It's only held in by about 6 large screws at the moment. But that sounds like a lot more work than adding an extension to the top. I've drilled a couple of holes in the top of the leg, and I'm gluing 2 dowel pins in using PVA glue. The extension piece has matching holes drilled in it ready to accept the pins. The cause of this was when I changed the plan to extend the station over the filing cabinet. That required raising the station by about 3 to 4 centimeters. To keep the gradients under control, they need to be longer, not steeper. That meant the height of many other parts of the layout had to change too. Critically for this, the double junction above the workbench is now on a continuous gradient rather than flat. That means the inner track here is no longer on a descending gradient to meet that, but is now level throughout, matching the highest point at the bridge. As a side effect, this will greatly assist laying the junctions in this area because they're all flat. But it also means this leg suddenly needs to be about 3 centimeters longer. I'm clamping the extension piece in place to keep it well aligned on the dowel pins, and I will weigh it down while the glue takes. I'll add some screws later to make it a really solid joint once I can take the clamps off. I've repeated the process of building a frame and surface on this side of the room too. As this piece was 3/4 of a full sheet of ply, it was far more difficult to manoeuvre around the house, let alone doing so while also trying to frame shots and running a camera. I'm not securing this bit down yet, as the framework for the gradient at the back isn't complete. Sadly, I ran out of 2x1 at the exact wrong moment. Before I get back to completing the baseboard upper levels, I do want to make sure my workbench gets sorted, as I've been without one for a while. The track here can be switched between DC, DCC programming, and DCC layout power. I also have a switchable power supply for electronics testing. Having been without a workbench since I started building this part of the layout, I'm developing an embarrassing backlog of stock that needs work. Some of that is stock that's developed problems, others are new arrivals that need decoder installation and configuration. The last part of the workbench that needs to be set up is somewhere to hold a controller. I use old mobile phones running Engine Driver as handheld controllers for the layout. I would like somewhere to put them down out of the way, but still accessible and without having them balanced on things. I have some old car dashboard phone holders, and I'm going to mount one to the baseboard edge here. It seems like the ideal solution. It was designed to hold a phone solidly to a moving car, so holding it to a static layout should be no problem. I've picked this location as it's handy for both the workbench and for the layout when the workbench is slid back out of the way. I can also get power easily here. It turns out old phone batteries don't last that long when running Engine Driver, so that's handy. A couple of people left comments on my previous video saying my audio was bad. Unfortunately, they weren't able to give me any information about what was wrong, although someone did say it was bad throughout the video, so I'm guessing it was my voice that was the problem. I can hear in the audio that I clearly can't breathe through my nose in that last video. But unless I take 3 months off each spring or summer, I can't really do a lot about that. Other than that, I don't really know what to change, so I'm now changing stuff at random. I have no idea if I'm even attempting to address the right issue, let alone if what I'm doing is an improvement or not. Do let me know if the audio is any better, worse, or just different in this video, and if there are any parts that are particularly good or bad that you can call out. Oh, do feel free to leave me a comment about actual model railway stuff too, not just about audio. Comments are useful. I've had some useful information left for me as comments, and I've also had some interesting discussions with people too. There's also a like button to click if you like the video. I upload to 4 different platforms, and the exact functionality varies per platform, but in general, if you like a video, this tells the platform you're viewing on to show you more content similar to this in future. If you're interested in following my progress specifically building this layout, you can also subscribe to the channel. This tells the platform that you'd like to see more of my videos in future, regardless of what they're about. Looking at the data YouTube shows me, about 90% of my audience are not subscribed to the channel. If you are really keen to see where this goes, YouTube also has a notification feature. The notification bell allows you to get push notifications to a phone or tablet when new videos are posted. Remember that this only does anything useful if you have the app on a suitable device, and have notifications enabled for the app too. See you next time up here in the study at Donget's Model Railway.